Hezekiah prepare for the impending Assyrian attack on Jerusalem? This is the question we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of 2 Chronicles on walking through the Bible. Today we're going to be discussing 2 Chronicles chapter 32, verses 1 to 8. But before we do that, let's read the passage. If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to 2 Chronicles chapter 32, verse 1. But if you don't have a Bible, don't worry, just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So 2 Chronicles chapter 32, beginning at verse 1. After these deeds of faithfulness, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, came and entered Judah, and he encamped against the fortified cities, thinking to win them over to himself. And when Hezekiah saw that Sennacherib had come, and that his purpose was to make war against Jerusalem, he consulted with his leaders and commanders to stop the water from the springs which were outside the city, and they helped him. Thus many people gathered together who stopped all the springs and the brook that ran through the land, saying, "Why should the kings of Assyria come and find much water?" And he strengthened himself, built up all the wall that was broken, raised it up to the towers, and built another wall outside. Also he repaired the Milo in the city of David, and made weapons and shields in abundance. Then he set military captains over the people, gathered them together to him in the open square of the city gate, and gave them encouragement, saying, "Be strong and courageous, do not be afraid nor dismayed before the king of Assyria, nor before all the multitude that is with him. For there are more with us than with him. With him is an arm of flesh, but with us is the Lord our God, to help us and to fight our battles." And the people were strengthened by the words of Hezekiah, king of Judah. Over the past few lessons, we've been looking at the reign of Hezekiah. Hezekiah was the son of Ahaz, with Ahaz being an especially wicked king. Hezekiah, on the other hand, was a righteous king, along the same vein as David was, in that he only worshipped God. He desired to do so correctly with all his heart, and he brought the people along too, getting them to worship God correctly with all their heart as well. We've seen Hezekiah cleanse the temple, restore proper worship at said temple, observe the Passover, remove idolatry from the land, and begin again the practice of tithing in order to care for the priests and Levites so that they could attend to the things of the Lord. These are all right and good and are said to be such in verse 1 of chapter 32. However, there are other things going on as well. Israel has fallen and the Assyrians have begun repopulating the north. This won't entirely be done for some years yet, but it is in the process of being done. The Assyrians are now the major power in the region and surely wanted control of Judah, in spite of it having a righteous king before God. What we're given here in chapter 32 is the results of Hezekiah's faith, which was ultimately prosperity and victory, for God was with him. In giving these results, the chronicler is going to skip over some facts that the author of 2 Kings does not. For instance, we discussed in our study of 2 Kings that what happens here with the Assyrians actually is two battles. One that occurs in about 701 BC and is recorded in secular history between Sennacherib of Assyria and Hezekiah. Hezekiah lost that battle because at that particular moment in time, his faith weakened enough to where he tried to buy Assyria off. This worked for a time, and it actually bought Hezekiah some time to refortify the walls of Jerusalem and strengthen himself militarily, perhaps even spiritually as well, so that about 3 years later, he would rebel against Sennacherib, thus bringing about the battle we have recorded here in chapter 32. Why does the chronicler leave this detail out? Because his whole purpose is to show what faith is capable of doing. The chronicler has shown time and time again what a lack of faith does. Here's what genuine faith does. When Hezekiah trusted in God, God was with him and provided him and the nation victory. For the returning captives, the chronicler is telling them they worship the same God. If they are faithful to him, he will do the same for them. He will bless them and be with them too. Now, yes, they don't have a king at this time, and they are being ruled over by other nations, but God is protecting them from harm, as we will see during the book of Esther. God is accomplishing his purpose for Israel. Therefore, stay faithful like Hezekiah was, it was the message at the beginning of chapter 32. What steps did Hezekiah take to defeat the Assyrians? Well, as we said earlier, he strengthened the walls of Jerusalem, making it harder for the Assyrians to attack and prevail. Up on the screen now is the result of that work that would have certainly begun before Sennacherib's first attack, but work that was completed before his second attack. You will notice that the city of Jerusalem is much bigger now due to Hezekiah's work. The city of David was all that the city of Jerusalem was while David was king. Solomon expanded it north to include the Temple Mount, and that's the outline Jerusalem had been for over 250 years. To make Jerusalem harder to attack, Hezekiah built the lower wall just to the east of the old city of David, and expanded Jerusalem and its wall over the Central Valley, right up to the Hinnom Valley on the west. Thus, Jerusalem sat higher than the land surrounding it on all sides. It was larger, which would allow more people and more military might to be there, making it much more formidable to take. This would especially be true if God was with the king and the nation due to their righteousness. But Hezekiah did something more. He stopped the water from the springs outside the city of Jerusalem, saying, "Why should the Assyrians find water when they come?" The way Hezekiah did this was by hiding the springs outside the city so the Assyrians couldn't find them, but in the process also diverting the water from these into an underground channel that ran inside the city, thus providing the city with water. This tunnel was a technological marvel for Hezekiah's time and can still be visited when seeing Jerusalem today. So upon the attack, which would likely have been a siege, the Assyrians wouldn't have had water, while the city of Jerusalem would have, thus tilting the battle in the favor of the children of Israel. Again, this tunnel project would have begun before Sennacherib's first attack, and likely was completed before that attack as well. But the process of covering the springs outside the city doesn't seem to have been devised until before this second attack. In addition to all this, Hezekiah encouraged the people to not be afraid of the Assyrians, for there is more with us than with them. Now, when comparing the armies simply by numbers, what Hezekiah said was not correct. The Assyrian army was larger, but God was on Israel's side. So Assyria could have had an army of 1 billion people, and Israel an army of 100, and Israel still would have prevailed. That is what Hezekiah meant, showing us that his faith had returned from where it wavered those 3 years before. In the next lesson, we're going to look at Sennacherib's confidence of victory and what that led him to do. So I invite you back for that lesson. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of 2 Chronicles chapter 32, verses 9 to 19, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time. Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.